Santa Claus is known for being friendly and loving. But what if they were originally villains and murderers? Prepare to be shocked and awestruck. Unearth the mystery of the unexpected in Rare Export, A Christmas Tale, the most thrilling and unbelievable adventure of the year. You won't believe your eyes as the secrets of Santa Claus are revealed like never before. Are you ready to embark on a journey filled with danger, magic, and a twist you'll never see coming? Don't miss this once-in-a-lifetime cinematic experience. Hurry, grab your popcorn, and get ready to be amazed. The film begins in the manager's room of an American company, Sub-Zero Incorporated, located in Lapland, Finland, which is carrying out an excavation project on the Korvatunturi hilltop. That day, Mr. Green, a foreman, arrives at his manager, Mr. Riley's office. Mr. Green informs him that they have discovered a strange phenomenon: sawdust at a depth of 400 meters. Surprised at first, Riley, the manager, explains that in the past, people often preserved ice by wrapping it in sawdust. According to Riley, there is something mysterious stored within the ice blocks. Riley also emphasizes that everyone working must follow safety guidelines. However, the foreman takes this as a joke, which leads Riley to pinch the foreman's ear hard, indicating his seriousness. Not far from the office, two children, Pietari and Juuso, are hiding behind a crate. They are secretly watching the drilling operation in silence. The workers continue drilling and discover a block of ice beneath the sawdust. Green then brings a piece of this ice block to Riley. Then the manager announces to the workers that his childhood dream is about to come true. The Sopa Korvatunturi is the largest mound in the world, built over centuries by the people of Lapland. After the children descend from the mountain, they leave the restricted area through a hole in the fence they made. Pietari, the younger one, believes that Santa Claus is buried in the mountain, yet he is convinced that Santa will come every year. Juuso laughs at this, stating that Santa isn't real, and at Christmas, it's a local man named Pieparainen who greets the children. At night, Pietari finds many books about Santa Claus at home and starts reading them. The illustrations depict Santa as an evil, horned creature with a staff in his hand. The book suggests that Santa Claus is a very malevolent figure. Time passes, and Christmas is just one day away. One morning, Pietari's father, Rano, is making a wolf trap. He sharpens wooden stakes and plants them into the ground in a deep hole. Then, he covers the hole with branches of fir trees and snow, and hangs bait above it. After setting the trap, Rano wakes up his son by throwing a snowball at him. Startled, the child finally wakes up. Ever since that night's incident, Pietari has been sensitive to the idea of an evil Santa Claus, leading him to become fearful of Christmas. While looking out the window, the child sees footprints of bare feet. This sight frightens Pietari, and he decides to talk to his father. Rano is busy at that time, working in his butcher's shop. Pietari asks his father about the footprints. His father, in turn, urges Pietari to stop fantasizing and quickly get dressed, as they will soon go deer hunting. However, Pietari remains convinced that Santa Claus is the one walking on the roof and watching him. Shortly thereafter, the family goes to meet with another reindeer herder. For the first time, Rano hands a fully loaded gun to his son, indicating a significant moment of trust and responsibility. It turns out Juuso is also there. Pietari tells his friend that Santa Claus walked under his window last night, but Juuso mocks him for this belief. Moments later, the reindeer begin to approach the pen. However, apart from two young deer, nothing else is visible. Rano realizes that something has happened to the herd. Then, Pieparainen, Juuso, and Pietari ride their snowmobiles to search for the reindeer. Near the fence Korvatunturi, the group finds a herd of reindeer that, for some unknown reason, are dead. A man named Aimo, also a reindeer herder and Juuso's father, is waiting for them at the fence. He has discovered the hole in the fence made by Pietari and Juuso to sneak onto Korvatunturi. The men speculate that a highly dangerous wolf has escaped from behind the fence and decimated the reindeer. The herders count the carcasses and realize they have lost $85,000. This is a substantial amount, and now the reindeer herders face the risk of bankruptcy. Meanwhile, Pietari examines one of the reindeer and notices bare footprints beneath it. The child realizes that a hungry Santa Claus has destroyed the herd. Angry and frustrated, Rano and his friends decide to breach the fenced area and confront the representatives of the drilling company. At night, the men arrive at the mountain's summit and break into the office with weapons, but find no one there. In the room, Pietari discovers a diagram on the wall of a burial site within the mountain and realizes that the workers have unearthed Santa Claus. Meanwhile, the other hunters gather around a large hole, puzzled by the work done there. Rano throws a flare into the bottom of the hole, but they still can't see anything. Eventually, the hunters return home. Frustrated, Rano decides to roast meat for the Christmas table, and Pietari seals the last window on the advent calendar with a stapler. Elsewhere, Juso still doesn't understand his friend's concerns. Pietari, wearing a hockey uniform for protection against the evil Santa Claus, shows Juso pictures from the books. They depict Santa Claus in his true demonic form. Pietari then shows the diagram he stole from the office on the mountain. From the books, he learns that at one time, the people of Lapland grew tired of the terrifying Santa Claus and decided to get rid of him. They trapped the villain onto breaking ice below him. When the lake fully froze, Santa was trapped in the ice. The locals then pulled out this large piece of ice and buried it under a pile of large stones. The resulting mountain was called Korvatanturi. After Juso leaves, Pietari goes down to his father's kitchen. Rano gives his son gingerbread and milk for dinner and lights a candle. However, the man is not in a festive mood. Pietari comments that the gingerbread tastes good, just like his mother used to make. For some reason, the woman had died years ago, and memories of her do not improve Rano's mood. Pietari asks if he has been a good child and whether his father would be upset if he disappeared. In response, Rano sends the boy to bed. Finally, he wishes his son a Merry Christmas and quietly wipes away tears brought on by memories and current troubles. That night, Pietari cannot sleep. He sits at the window, holding a bunch of keys in his hand. If he falls asleep, the keys will drop and clang loudly on the floor, waking him. Indeed, the keys fall, but the child falls asleep. Meanwhile, at Korvatanturi, the anxious Foreman Green contacts the manager via radio, demanding that a helicopter be sent immediately for evacuation. The cargo extracted from the mountain turns out to be a living creature, frightening all the workers. As they talk, someone appears along the mountain and destroys all the workers. Green is shocked to see a creature with bare feet in front of him. Christmas is approaching. Rano takes the burnt meat out of the oven and pushes it back in frustration. Then he tries to heat the fireplace, but there is an explosion and a cloud of soot flies into his face. Pietari wakes up to his father's scream and runs to help him. A frightened Rano, armed with a chair, checks the fireplace. It turns out Pietari had set a trap for Santa there. Rano considers this a foolish joke and wants to punish his son. Pietari then leaves the house. Outside, he is terribly frightened when he sees something. There is no bait on top of the wolf trap. Hearing his son scream, Rano runs over and slowly approaches the trap. Looking into the trap hole, he first finds bird feathers, but deeper in there is a man. The man jumps and grabs the curious Pietari. Rano pretends everything is normal and does not let his son look into the hole. Father and son return home. Pietari eats breakfast and insists on returning to the trap, but Rano tells him to stay calm. From the house window, Pietari sees his father and Pieparanen, dressed as Santa Claus, dragging something large in a bag across the yard. The men bring what they drag to the butcher's house and place it on the table. It turns out to be an old bearded man. In his jacket pocket is an American passport in the name of Ryan Green, the foreman from the mountain. Rano doesn't know what to do. On one hand, the old man is wrong for trespassing on his yard, but on the other, it's illegal to make a wolf trap. After thinking, the men decide to get rid of the old man and cover their tracks. Meanwhile, the unsupervised Pietari runs to the wolf trap and jumps into it. At the bottom of the hole, he finds a bag with a scary doll inside. Back at the butcher's house, Rano and Pieparanen sharpen their knives and start working. But then the old man suddenly pulls his hand. It turns out he is still alive. The old man starts moving his nose as if smelling something delicious. Outside the butcher's house, the curious Pietari intends to peek through the window and witness what is happening inside. Rano sees his son and runs out into the street to catch him and bring him inside. But the boy quickly runs towards the highway. Rano gets in his car and follows Pietari. On the highway, he sees the sheriff's car and his son getting into it. Rano curses and chases the police car. The sheriff stops at Aimo's house. Here everyone gets out of their cars, and the sheriff reports that strange things have been happening all day. Rano, head bowed, says that he and Pietari are fine. Meanwhile, Aimo comes out of his house and brings everyone gathered to his barn. Several hundred sacks of potatoes have been stolen from him. For some reason, the potatoes have been empty from the sacks. The stunned sheriff looks around the barn and tells them that tonight stoves and heaters were stolen from almost every house. The thieves didn't hesitate to break walls to get into the houses. Aimo's wife's hairdryer was also stolen. The angry man thinks that the American company's representatives stole all this equipment and will use it to create technology. In the house, thinking his friend is still asleep, the boy goes to his bed and finds the same scary doll that was in the wolf trap under the blanket. Pietari grabs the doll, runs out, and reports that Juso has been taken. Meanwhile, Pieparanen watches the old man, chewing Christmas gingerbread. The old man smells again, as if sniffing delicious food. As Pieparanen approaches, the old man suddenly attacks him viciously. Rano, Pietari, and Aimo arrive at the butcher's house. A frightened Pieparanen greets them at the door. He sticks a handkerchief to his bitten ear. Pietari enters the house, and the men examine Pieparanen's wound. Annoyed, Pieparanen's friends enter the butcher's house with weapons. The naked old man, hunched over, sits in a corner looking threatening. Aimo points his gun at the old man, approaches, and initially asks neutral questions. The old man remains silent and doesn't even look at his friend. Rano decides to support his friend and pokes the old man with a stick, but he still doesn't react. At home, Pietari calls the parents of all his friends. It turns out no child has been at home all day. The boy tries not to show anxiety, but the disappearance of the children from the village occupies him. In the butcher's house, seeing him, the old man stands up. Rano grabs his son and brings him closer to the old man. Then the boy explains that the old man is the evil Santa Claus, who came to kidnap all the children. The adults finally believe Pietari and realize that this evil creature has been dug up from Mount Corvatunturi. The old man prepares to attack the child. Then the men point their guns at the villain and decide to tie him up. They succeed. Now the old man is unarmed and the group watches him, chewing Christmas gingerbread. Suddenly, the radio turns on in the jacket stolen by the old man from Foreman Green on the mountain. It's manager really checking in. He doesn't yet know what happened at the top of Corvatunturi and thinks his workers are fine. Moments later, a radio call comes through with Riley informing them that a helicopter will be arriving at the mountain in half an hour, asking for Santa to be prepared for loading. The men dress the old man, who arrived with Pieparanen that morning, in Santa Claus clothes, put him in a cage, and take him to Corvatunturi. Along the way, the old man eyes Pietari as his prey. Simultaneously, a helicopter arrives, from which Mr. Riley emerges, inquiring about the cargo. To clarify the situation, they roll out the cage with the old man dressed as Santa. Riley approaches and touches his beard curiously. While the adults are occupied, Pietari leaves the car and heads to the large hangar. The old man in the cage raises his head and stares directly at Riley. Suddenly, his eyes start to glow frighteningly. Riley quickly retreats and instructs the Finns to lower their weapons and smile as widely as possible. It turns out the old man in the cage is not Santa, but one of his elves. Suddenly, the lights on the mountain go out, and the helicopter pilot disappears with a scream. Riley states that Santa will now look for the naughtiest ones. The reindeer hunters cock their guns, realizing they are surrounded on all sides by frightening naked old men, Christmas elves. They prepare to defend their master. The elves quickly dispose of Riley and approach the other men. Rano realizes that Pietari is missing. The men shoot back at the elves, run into the hangar, and find Pietari there. They close the door and soon see something terrifying. In the middle of the hangar, inside a block of ice, sits a giant creature with horns, Santa Claus. The elves have stolen stoves and heaters from the villagers, brought them to their master's lair, and lit them to melt the ice. Soon the ice will melt and the monster will be free. The elves have gathered the children for their master so he can punish them when he wakes up. Juso is among them. When he hears his father's voice, he starts crying and begs to be saved. Amo rushes to the sacks and tries to find his son. Meanwhile, the elves begin to break down the door from outside. Piiparainen and Rauno turn off the stoves and heaters and try to barricade the entrance to the hangar with them. Amo finds Juso and hugs him. At that moment, the ice block cracks severely, but Santa can't get out yet. Piiparainen screams in fear that no one will survive from here, and the others also make noise and panic. Hiitari alone remains calm and develops a rescue plan. Checking the hangar, he sees a hole in the roof. The boy gets an idea and tries to shout at everyone, but they can't hear him. Adults make an incredible noise, and children in sacks cry. Then Hiitari fires a shotgun, and everyone suddenly falls silent, staring at him. Piiparainen knows how to fly a helicopter, so he carefully leaves the hangar with a bundle of gingerbread cookies and distributes them to the elves. The elves immediately forget everything and greedily pounce on the snack, taking advantage of their confusion. Piiparainen runs to the helicopter, takes off, and communicates with Hiitari using a radio found in the hangar. All the children in sacks are put into a cargo net. Through the hole in the hangar roof, friends hook the net to the helicopter. Hiitari also holds onto the net because all the children must be together for the plan to work. The helicopter with its load rises and the net with the children flies away from the mountain. Hiitari then orders Piiparainen to hover over the forest and chase the elves. The villains should be able to smell that the children have left the hangar and chase them. And indeed they do. A horde of elves runs through the forest chasing the helicopter. The next step in the plan is to use the children as bait to lead the elves to the empty reindeer pen and lock them in. At that time, Aimo and Rauno stay in the hangar and drill holes in the ice block around Santa. The men insert dynamite into the resulting holes. Meanwhile, the helicopter flies towards the polar reindeer pen. The elves will soon arrive, but a problem arises. The pen's gate is closed. There's no time to change the plan. So Hiitari decides to go down to the pen and open the heavy door for the elves himself. But because of the hanging net, Piiparainen can't land the helicopter to pick up the boy later. And inside the pen, the elves could severely injure him. However, Hiitari doesn't care. He decides to sacrifice himself. Not listening to Piiparainen's reasoning, the boy jumps from the net to the pole, descends to the pen, and opens the heavy door for the elves. They are already close. Hiitari turns on the electricity to keep the fence energized so the elves can't get out. Then the boy asks Piiparainen to tell Rauno about his deeds and prepares to meet the elves. The angry creatures run into the pen and head straight for Hiitari. The boy is very scared, so he closes his eyes and thinks of his father. At the same time, Aimo and Rauno get into the car and leave the hangar containing Santa Claus. After they drive to a safe distance, Rauno presses the button on a remote detonator and blows up the building from afar. The hangar and the horned monster are shattered into pieces. Rauno, stunned by the explosion, wishes himself a Merry Christmas. Still in the pen, Hiitari opens his eyes and realizes that the elves won't attack him. They just stand confused and look around. A jubilant Piiparainen chuckles as he sees the explosion on the mountain. He then informs Hiitari via radio that Santa has been destroyed, which means the elves are now unemployed. Hiitari is glad that his plan worked and no one was hurt except the villains. The boy then asks Piiparainen to take the children home, as they should be in bed by now. The next day, 3 adult friends and Juso arrive at the polar reindeer pen. There Hiitari is waiting for them. He has locked up the elves and counted them, and there are 198 of them. The boy thinks they can be sold profitably by disguising them as Santa Clauses. Rauno offers to charge $85,000 for one Santa. Amo asks his son to quickly calculate how much profit will be made from all the Santas. According to the calculations, it turns out to be about 17 million. Rauno can't contain his emotions, approaches his son, and hugs him. They admire each other's courage, admire the trapped elves and the beautiful sunrise from behind the mountain. The holiday passes, and the new year comes. There are 312 days until Christmas. The hunters put the humble elves in the shower and force them to bathe. 76 days before Christmas, the elves are taught to hold children in their arms, stroke them on the head, and give them gifts. The whole group participates in the training. Rano hugs Pietari and shows the old men how to treat babies properly. Amo oversees their discipline. He puts a celebratory hat on the head of a very successful student. This is the initiation ritual for the Santas. 24 days before Christmas, friends put the newly made Santas into boxes and prepare to sell them to different countries. Hiperinin now has a cargo plane and is ready to take off with Santas in it. The film ends.